In an unprecedented move that has sent shockwaves through Windsor Castle and the corridors of the royal household, sources say Meghan Markle has reportedly taken an unyielding stance. Without financial guarantees, her children will be denied access to traditional royal privileges. Insiders claim that this decision, delivered in confidential correspondence to senior palace officials late last week, has created a rift not seen since the abdication crisis of 1936. Observers within Sandringham House reportedly described the atmosphere as tense, almost volatile, with aides scrambling to assess the potential fallout. While the public has largely framed Meghan's decisions as personal or protective of her family, palace insiders suggest a far deeper institutional crisis is unfolding. The sources allege that the timing of this declaration coincides with looming financial audits and the review of Harry and Meghan's remaining royal allowances, raising immediate questions about precedent and the application of Letters Patent 1917. Such an unprecedented ultimatum threatens not just personal relationships, but the operational integrity of royal protocol itself. Royal watchers say the implications are profound. Experts indicate that a denial of access to royal resources could trigger legal consultations within the Privy Council, and whispers of emergency meetings at Buckingham Palace have reportedly begun. Staff close to King Charles III are said to be weighing both moral and constitutional consequences, with advisors reportedly debating whether compliance could set a precedent affecting succession privileges or the broader monarchy's public image. The drama deepens as sources claim Prince Harry is caught between loyalty to his wife and adherence to palace expectations, while Prince William and senior courtiers reportedly brace for what they perceive as a challenge to institutional authority. Confidential reports suggest discussions are already underway about potential legal and administrative responses, actions that could redefine the family's internal power dynamics. As the palace reportedly prepares for high-level consultations, one question looms. Could Meghan's ultimatum spark a chain reaction of institutional consequences that none within the royal household are prepared to handle? The coming hours may reveal whether this unprecedented declaration is merely a private dispute or the ignition of a crisis that could reach the very foundations of the monarchy. As the palace reels from Meghan's audacious declaration, insiders say senior advisors are reportedly exploring every legal instrument at their disposal to assert institutional authority. Sources indicate that confidential counsel within Buckingham Palace has already convened emergency briefings with the Privy Council, examining whether Letters Patent 1917, along with recent royal financial statutes, can be leveraged to override unilateral restrictions on the children's access. One insider described the deliberations as a chess match with the monarchy's credibility on the line, noting that such measures are rarely invoked and carry both symbolic and practical weight. Legal experts reportedly advising the Crown are said to be evaluating a range of constitutional mechanisms, including temporary suspension of discretionary allowances, adjustments to household privileges, and potential restrictions tied to royal estates, such as Frogmore Cottage or Sandringham House. Sources claim that aides close to King Charles III are documenting every communication, anticipating that the ultimatum could escalate into a formal test of institutional power, a rare scenario where private family dynamics intersect with centuries-old legal precedent. Further complicating matters, court historians and constitutional advisors allegedly warn that ignoring Meghan's stance could spark public scrutiny over the Crown's authority, with media outlets likely framing any punitive action as a power struggle rather than a procedural enforcement. Confidential reports suggest that senior courtiers are weighing whether to issue internal directives to enforce access and financial transparency, effectively signaling that institutional imperatives take precedence over personal negotiation. Yet, insiders hint at a deeper, more alarming threat. Sources say that preliminary audits of financial records tied to Prince Harry and Meghan's activities have already revealed discrepancies or transactions that could be interpreted as breaches of expected protocol. The palace reportedly faces a dilemma: act decisively and risk public backlash, or delay and risk perceived weakness in enforcing royal authority. As the legal machinery reportedly begins to hum into motion, a chilling possibility emerges. Could the mechanisms designed to protect centuries of royal tradition inadvertently expose evidence of betrayal or misconduct? The coming hours, sources warn, may reveal actions behind closed doors that could redefine not only access rights, but the loyalty and credibility of those closest to the throne. Confidential sources now claim that preliminary investigations into Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's financial dealings have uncovered transactions and arrangements that insiders describe as unsettling and potentially damaging to the Crown's integrity. Reports suggest that expenditures on private estates, charitable foundations, and undisclosed third-party contracts are being scrutinized by palace accountants and legal advisors alike. Sources allege that some of these financial arrangements may contravene established royal protocol, raising questions about both transparency and accountability within the family's inner circle. Palace insiders reportedly describe a growing sense of urgency as auditors trace patterns that, while not yet proven illegal, could be interpreted as a breach of fiduciary responsibility expected of senior royals. One confidential aide is said to have remarked, "It's as if the rules applied to everyone else suddenly evaporate when it suits them." The implications, according to legal observers within Sandringham and Buckingham Palace, are profound. Any confirmation of impropriety could trigger formal sanctions, adjustments to allowances, or even restrictions on the use of royal estates. The scandal allegedly extends beyond finances. Sources report that communications between Meghan, external advisors, and key financial intermediaries are being examined for evidence of coordinated attempts to influence palace decision-making. Confidential correspondences reportedly indicate a strategy designed to consolidate control over resources, timing of announcements, and even public perception, heightening tensions between the Sussexes and the core royal household. The palace reportedly now faces a high-stakes dilemma. Any misstep could inflame public perception of a divided monarchy, while delay could allow the alleged breaches to become entrenched narratives. Aides close to King Charles III and Prince William are said to be drafting contingency plans that could include legal warnings, formal notices, or, if necessary, emergency Privy Council consultations. As the evidence reportedly mounts, one alarming question emerges within the corridors of power. Are these alleged actions merely overstepped privilege, or do they constitute a deliberate challenge to the authority and legacy of the Crown itself? Sources indicate that the coming days will demand decisive action, setting the stage for urgent deadlines and escalating pressures that may force irreversible decisions. Sources report that the palace has now set an unprecedented internal deadline for responses to Meghan Markle's ultimatum and the mounting financial irregularities linked to the Sussexes. Insiders claim that senior advisors at Buckingham Palace and Sandringham House are operating under a strict 72-hour window, a timeline rarely invoked outside matters of national crisis. Confidential briefings indicate that failure to address the ultimatum could trigger immediate operational consequences, ranging from temporary suspension of allowances to restricted access to royal residences and official engagements. According to palace insiders, the pressure is not merely procedural. Reports suggest that King Charles III and Prince William are facing a psychological clock. The weight of public perception, internal morale, and constitutional precedent is said to be intensifying by the hour. Sources describe meetings as tense, with aides shuffling papers and reviewing legal statutes late into the night, while courtiers allegedly monitor every communication from the Sussex household for signs of escalation. The sense of urgency, one source claims, is like watching a storm tighten its grip over Sandringham and Buckingham. You know it's coming, but the exact impact is impossible to predict. Confidential advisors reportedly indicate that the looming deadline is meant to compel compliance without immediate public exposure, yet the very act of setting it has intensified internal anxiety. Observers close to Prince Harry are said to be weighing options, balancing personal loyalty to Meghan against the potential risk of violating royal expectations. Sources allege that informal messages between the Sussexes and palace officials reveal a tug of war, each side calculating strategy, timing, and optics with meticulous care. As the countdown reportedly ticks closer to its critical point, palace insiders warn that institutional patience is near exhaustion. Financial auditors, legal counsel, and senior courtiers are said to be readying a series of escalation measures should the deadline pass without resolution. Confidential sources suggest that beyond mere financial or procedural outcomes, the pressure now strikes at the very heart of family loyalty and dynastic legacy, a challenge that forces the monarchy to confront questions of trust, authority, and the precedent it will leave for future generations. The clock is reportedly running out, and insiders hint that the coming decisions may demand moves that are as calculated as they are morally charged, setting the stage for a dramatic confrontation over inheritance, privilege, and legacy. As the palace reportedly grapples with the ticking deadline, sources say that the focus has shifted inward, from finances and protocol to the very heart of the monarchy's legacy. Confidential insiders describe intense private discussions among King Charles III, Prince William, and senior courtiers regarding the symbolic and generational implications of Meghan Markle's ultimatum. Observers suggest that beyond immediate access or allowances, the issue now touches inheritance, estate control, and the sanctity of traditions preserved for centuries. Sources allege that key royal estates, including Frogmore Cottage, Sandringham House, and Windsor Castle's private apartments, have become focal points of debate. Courtiers reportedly question whether permitting unilateral decisions by the Sussexes could undermine long-established stewardship of these properties and compromise the integrity of succession protocols. Confidential aides indicate that every asset, from ancestral vaults to ceremonial archives, is being considered not merely as property but as markers of dynastic authority, a reflection of both historical legacy and future influence. Family dynamics, insiders claim, have grown increasingly fraught. Prince William is reportedly caught between the necessity of enforcing institutional standards and preserving fraternal ties, while King Charles III faces the delicate task of balancing public duty with private reconciliation. Sources describe private conversations as tense, with references to decades-old expectations, historical precedent, and even symbolic gestures of power, such as seating arrangements during official engagements and ceremonial access to Windsor Castle. Allegedly, every decision carries potential for ripple effects across the monarchy's public image and internal cohesion. Confidential reports suggest that advisors are warning that inaction could embolden the Sussexes to establish new financial or symbolic norms, setting a precedent that could challenge royal authority for generations. At the same time, insiders indicate that aggressive action carries equally high stakes, risking public perception of a divided family or punitive overreach. As palace insiders reportedly debate these options, the narrative points to an inevitable crossroads. Strategic countermoves are not merely tactical, but existential. The coming days, sources say, may force decisions that protect the crown's authority, safeguard dynastic legacy, and redefine the balance of power within the royal family, all while navigating an increasingly volatile combination of personal loyalty, institutional obligation, and public scrutiny. According to palace insiders, as the legacy dilemma intensifies, King Charles III and Prince William are reportedly moving swiftly to implement strategic countermeasures designed to reassert authority and safeguard the monarchy's institutional stability. Sources describe these maneuvers as highly calculated, blending legal precision, financial oversight, and ceremonial influence to protect both assets and public credibility. Confidential reports indicate that aides are coordinating a multi-pronged approach, including adjustments to discretionary allowances, formal reminders of protocol, and the careful management of access to royal estates. Sources claim that courtiers have reportedly drafted letters emphasizing the legal obligations tied to Letters Patent 1917, while simultaneously outlining expectations for responsible stewardship of both property and public resources. Insiders describe the strategy as balancing pressure with diplomacy, ensuring that the Sussexes are aware of potential consequences without provoking a public confrontation that could compromise the monarchy's reputation. It's chess at the highest level, one confidential aide allegedly remarked. Every move is designed to protect the institution and maintain control without triggering a media storm. Beyond legal and ceremonial actions, sources say financial recalibrations are underway. Reports indicate that allowances tied to Frogmore Cottage, private trusts, and charitable foundations are being reviewed for compliance, with auditors instructed to flag any discrepancies for immediate review. Courtiers reportedly see these measures not merely as enforcement, but as a signal, a demonstration that the Crown retains ultimate authority over resources, privileges, and access, even when personal dynamics threaten to cloud judgment. Insiders also allege that communication channels are being tightened. Confidential correspondences between the Sussexes and external advisors are reportedly being monitored and catalogued, while intermediaries within the palace are tasked with maintaining transparency and rapid response capability. The strategic aim, sources suggest, is clear: reassert control over access, inheritance, and institutional norms before the situation escalates beyond repair. Yet, even as these calculated moves unfold, sources warn that the Sussexes' financial leverage and public influence pose a looming threat. Reports suggest that the next phase of this escalating crisis may focus on the tangible resources underpinning royal authority: estates, allowances, and private trusts, forcing the Crown into a high-stakes confrontation where every pound, contract, and asset carries both symbolic and practical weight. Palace insiders now reportedly indicate that the financial stakes tied to Meghan Markle's ultimatum are mounting at an unprecedented pace. Sources claim that auditors and senior courtiers are tracking expenditures across royal estates, charitable foundations, and private engagements, with particular scrutiny on Frogmore Cottage, Windsor Castle Apartments, and Sandringham House. Confidential reports suggest that discrepancies, if unaddressed, could trigger costly administrative interventions, affecting not only the Sussexes' privileges but the broader operational budget of the royal household. Sources say that internal discussions focus on more than money. Operational resources, from security personnel to ceremonial staff, are allegedly being diverted to manage potential fallout, creating logistical strain across the palace. One insider reportedly remarked, "It's like watching the entire system flex under pressure. Every guard, every aide, every allowance has become part of the chessboard." Courtiers reportedly face difficult decisions: redirecting resources to enforce compliance risks, disruption to official engagements and the monarchy's public duties, while inaction could embolden further unilateral actions by the Sussexes. Financial experts advising the palace allegedly highlight another concern: mortgages, private trusts, and contractual obligations tied to the Sussexes' estates may provide leverage but also create exposure. Reports suggest that if deadlines pass without resolution, King Charles III and Prince William may need to take extraordinary measures, including revisiting contractual agreements, reassessing estate management, and freezing discretionary funds. Sources warn that each measure carries potential backlash both publicly and privately, intensifying pressure on the family's leadership. The psychological toll, insiders claim, is compounding. Those responsible for managing resources reportedly describe growing anxiety and isolation, as the convergence of financial, operational, and reputational stakes creates an environment where every decision is scrutinized and every misstep amplified. Confidential sources indicate that courtiers and advisors are working around the clock, balancing emergency protocols with attempts to maintain internal cohesion. As the palace reportedly braces for the consequences of these financial and operational pressures, one chilling thought emerges: the stakes are no longer symbolic. Every pound, every contract, every resource is now a potential weapon or vulnerability, and the Sussexes' ultimatum may force decisions that could reshape access, inheritance, and the very architecture of royal authority. The pressure is escalating, setting the stage for a psychological siege that insiders suggest could test loyalties, endurance, and judgment in ways the monarchy has rarely confronted. Insiders now reportedly describe the palace as under an intense psychological strain, as the combined weight of Meghan Markle's ultimatum, financial scrutiny, and institutional pressure begins to take a personal toll on key royal figures. Sources claim that King Charles III and Prince William are experiencing mounting anxiety, with aides observing signs of fatigue, heightened tension, and uncharacteristic isolation in private quarters at Buckingham Palace and Sandringham House. One confidential source allegedly remarked, You can feel the strain. The palace is tense, almost silent at moments, as if everyone is holding their breath for the next move. The psychological pressure, sources say, extends beyond the physical confines of the estates. Courtiers and advisors reportedly work long hours monitoring communications, tracking financial movements, and preparing for all possible contingencies. Confidential briefings indicate that the Sussexes' public statements, media appearances, and social media activities are being analyzed in real time, amplifying a pervasive sense of scrutiny and vulnerability. Every headline, every report feels like a potential spark, one insider reportedly commented, describing the tension as a constant grinding weight on decision makers. Royal experts allege that the siege mentality has fueled paranoia and hypercaution. Sources claim that minor disagreements or missteps are now magnified into potential threats to dynastic authority, creating an environment where strategic decisions must be calculated with extraordinary precision. Internal communications reportedly emphasize secrecy, control, and rapid response, while the looming deadlines on financial compliance and estate management continue to compound stress. Sources also suggest that the Sussexes may be aware of the psychological strain they have wrought. Allegedly, their maneuvers are designed to maximize institutional discomfort while maintaining public perception of innocence or moral high ground. Confidential reports hint that courtiers feel trapped between enforcing authority and preserving family cohesion, a duality that has reportedly left key figures questioning their own judgment and resilience. As insiders indicate, the palace now faces a precarious psychological landscape, leaders operating under relentless pressure, advisors balancing moral and institutional obligations, and the Sussexes' ultimatum acting as both catalyst and sword over the monarchy's head. Sources warn that the next moves will test not only finances and protocol, but the very resolve, endurance, and strategic judgment of those charged with defending the crown. The stage is set for a moral reckoning that may determine the monarchy's course for years to come. As the palace reportedly emerges from the whirlwind of Meghan Markle's ultimatum, insiders say that the monarchy is confronting a profound moral and institutional reckoning. Sources claim that King Charles III and Prince William have been forced to weigh the balance between family loyalty, public duty, and the preservation of centuries old traditions. Confidential reports describe private discussions as sober and deliberate, with courtiers advising that any decision must reinforce the integrity of royal protocol while acknowledging the human and emotional complexities at play. Royal experts suggest that the crisis highlights a central truth. Authority and legacy are inseparable, yet perpetually vulnerable to personal ambition, strategic maneuvering, and public scrutiny. Sources allege that the palace has resolved to implement measures that ensure financial accountability, preserve access to key estates, and protect succession norms, while simultaneously managing optics to avoid the appearance of punitive overreach. This delicate equilibrium, insiders emphasize, is intended not only to enforce rules but to convey a broader message. The monarchy's legitimacy rests on discipline, transparency, and adherence to precedent, even under extraordinary pressure. Confidential sources report that internal communications now stress vigilance, cohesion, and strategic foresight. Advisors reportedly continue to monitor resources, communications, and public narratives while also supporting the psychological resilience of senior royals. Experts within Sandringham and Buckingham Palace reportedly described the situation as a test of endurance, judgment, and institutional foresight, with consequences that extend far beyond any individual conflict. For observers and royal watchers, the lesson is clear. Personal disputes can carry ramifications for dynastic stability, and unilateral decisions, however justified in private, may trigger cascading effects that challenge centuries of carefully maintained tradition. Sources indicate that the palace is now moving forward with a combination of calculated authority, measured enforcement, and symbolic gestures designed to reaffirm both public confidence and internal cohesion. As the monarchy navigates these unprecedented pressures, one question remains for the public and those invested in royal affairs. How will the institution adapt, survive, and assert its enduring relevance in the face of personal ambitions and unprecedented challenges? The coming months, insiders warn, may well define the trajectory of the crown for a generation, and the decisions made now will echo far beyond